evening and welcome. Having to deal with sight loss or low vision is merely one of the challenges that the visually impaired are facing when living life. Blind individuals are just like anyone else, except they're not able to see. That's often thought as the ideal way of looking at persons with disability. But does our thinking reflect the real state of things? What is real life like for a person with visual impairment? Tonight we have three special guests with us from the United Blind Persons of Fiji, and we'll be talking about some of the issues faced by the visually impaired in Fiji. We have with us first up Lanieta and Anaseni. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies, this evening.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start off with the organization United Blind Persons of Fiji. For someone who may not be aware, please tell us what this organization is and what it does.
Well, the United Blind Persons of Fiji was established in 1992 by persons with vision impairment themselves, since they saw that there was a great need to advocate on issues affecting persons with vision impairment. So they decided to set up or establish an organization for persons with vision impairment themselves. So the organization has been running from 1992 until now. So our main focus is on advocacy and awareness at the community level right up to government, and also providing services to our members. This is in terms of assistive devices that our members use in order for them to participate in society just like any other person. And also we do referrals. When we say referrals, is that the services that's available within Fiji, like one example would be the government service that's provided by the Ministry of Women, Children, Poverty Alleviation. This is in terms of the schemes. So what do is that we try and identify our members, so we get our members, and also we help them or we assist them in terms of writing them support letters, and also referring them to the services that is out there, so they can also be included. And also we have a office which is at Brown Street, and we have set of board members and also the secretariat staff that help to run the organization on a day-to-day basis.
Lanieta, talk to us about some of your members. Who does the United Blind Persons comprise of?
Thank you. There is three categories of membership. We have the regular membership, which is those who are blind or visually impaired, those who are legally registered. When I say legally blind or visually impaired, they have been proven by the medical doctors that we are blind or have a low vision. And the second category of membership is those who are not blind or visually impaired and wishes to support and assist the organization. They can join as an associate member, but they don't have the voting rights. For regular members, they have the voting rights, and for associate members, they don't have voting rights. And the third category of membership is for those companies or clubs that would like to also be a member and also provide support or assistance to the organization.
So looking at your support network, you of course said that you've got associate members.
Yeah.
What about business houses and service providers? Do you work with them as well in terms of funding for your activities?
Yes, they are not literally joining in as the third category of membership, but the United Blind Persons of Fiji has been really fortunate and also thankful to these corporate and business houses for for their support, or even individuals that come in and do provide financial support or even in-kind donations for various activities that the UBP organizes. They do approach the private sector for support. So they either do financial support or in-kind donation, and also they are one of the contributors to the disability awards that would be coming up next year, and the first disability award that happened this year. So they had contributed, sponsored most of the awards, and also for the university institutions like FNU. Yeah.
Congratulations on a successful event yesterday. You had a wrap-up of the entire week of activities that you had, and I was there, I was present, and it was lovely to see that there were quite a few awards that had been sponsored by some sponsors that had come up. Could you just quickly tell us about what happened yesterday and how it went?
Well, at the event last night, we were fortunate to have been receiving commitment from business houses that have already pledged their commitment to the 2020 Disability Gala Awards. So we had FNU and another two companies that have come in on board to start rolling on the show in the preparation for the Disability Gala Awards. So yeah, we had two events last night. It was the official closing for the annual White Cane Awareness Week. We would like to thank the New Zealand government and the New Zealand High Commissioner, Ambassador to Fiji, for always supporting the work that has been done by the association. So this is not the first time that the New Zealand High Commission has supported us. They have also supported us earlier this year in June. This is after we had a 1 week White Cane Wellness Walk, which they also came and support us after we did the walk. So what they did is that they had a gathering with all their partners, and then they invited reps from the organization, where they also contributed some funds to the organization for member support services.
Thank you, Arseni. When we come back from our break, we'll talk about White Cane awareness. Stay with us. So Lanieta, let's talk about White Cane awareness and some of the activities that you had throughout this week.
Okay. Throughout the week, what we did is that we had the launch. We had the launch at the Fiji Museum on the 12th, and we would also like to thank the Fiji Museum for hosting us for the day. And also at that launch, the main focus was around accessibility, how the Fiji Museum was committing to making the venue accessible for all, not only for persons with physical disabilities, but also for those who are with vision impairment. And then on Monday, what we did is that we went to banks. So we tried to visit one of our major sponsors, which was HFC. So what we're trying to do is not only we request them to support us, but also we try and go back to the companies and also advocate on our issues. So yeah, on Monday we went to HFC, and also on Tuesday we were here with FBC. We also would like to thank FBC for taking out the time, especially the staff that came for the awareness session. So it was a really fruitful one. And also on Wednesday we traveled down to Airports Fiji Limited where we did awareness with the staff at AFL, and it was a good outcome, because what they have told us is that they would be doing training in future, where they would invite the organization, not only the organization but also other organizations for persons with disabilities, to do a disability awareness session to the staff at the Airports Fiji Limited, and also those at ATS and Fiji Airways. So we're hoping to do all a combined training with the different organizations, and also from our side. So yeah, that's what happened when we went to Airports Fiji Limited. And
Amasini,
yep.
given the way that we treat persons with disabilities in Fiji, do you think that a lot of this awareness is needed?
Well, yes, we think that for us persons with disabilities, awareness is an ongoing process, because we still need to advocate or create awareness on our issues, because sometimes people tend to forget, and people that are out there in the community tend to forget, and they are ignorant, or maybe it's just their behavior, that sometimes they forget that we are persons with disabilities, and then they would deal with issues about their own way, forgetting that we have other needs that would help us to participate fully, just like any other person.
So, by way of example, your meeting with AFL, what were some of the outcomes that you were seeking from there?
So when we met with AFL, the interesting thing was they did not know that our members were facing problems when our members get to travel overseas, not only for personal visits, but also for organizational visits or conferences. So what happened is that when our members go and check in, and then they are told by the staff at ATS that, look, you cannot travel alone, you cannot see, you would need a family member to take you. So that has happened to our members in the past, and it was really sad, because sometimes members call us at 5 o'clock, 5 or 4 in the morning, telling us that the airport staff is not allowing me to go, because they said that I would not be able to travel independently.
So you've had members who have been refused point blank to not travel, even after they've got their visas approved and they've got certificates and they have already traveled in the past.
Yes. So the tactic that we use is that, look, if you are not going, if you would not allow me to travel, I will have to take it up to the media. And then they would go and speak to their supervisor. Okay, you are set to travel. So we try and use those kind of strategies for us to allow our members to travel. So,
but the fundamental value of being helpful, because they are in the service industry, you would think that they would be more approachable in instances like this. Have you also come across instances where maybe airline staff are more helpful than AFL and ATS staff?
Yes, it does. From my experiences traveling, it's the airline staff are helpful, but and also maybe the lack of awareness provided around disability. How, we have the right to also travel. We are not different from anyone else, the general public. We do things differently. We can travel. If we are traveling on our own, there is a meet and assist services within every airport, where if I'm traveling alone, then one of my travel need is I would request that the meet and assist services, where they can assist me right up to the plane. So there is a meet and assist where we ask that we can be serviced under that. But because hence that meeting with AFL over the years, those who are blind or visually impaired or even persons with disability in general, they are refused when they check in, even though they have full air tickets paid and all that, and connecting flights, but that is the challenge.
Right. So that's one of the major setbacks that you've talked about. Are there any positives that are already in place, things, services that you can rely on that have been provided that you're able to access?
In terms of the...
In terms of accessibility, say for example, when you are filling out your departure card, are they helpful there, or do they still refuse to provide assistance in those instances?
Oh, in those areas they are helpful, and it's us, we have to also inform them if they are not aware that I myself cannot read the forms, so I would need their assistance to fill the form for me, and also in the plane. So the flight attendant do fill out those forms when we request them to do so. But I guess some of our members, if they are traveling at first time, sometimes they are not fully empowered to advocate for their rights and get it known to the airport staff. So that's where those challenges arises, and that's where the association comes in and play that support to ensure that member is able to travel. And sometimes they do, when they miss, they disallow them to travel, so they travel on the next day, and then the conversation continues from the organization to the airport staff or their management that he or she is going for a international training or very important conferences that you need to let him or her to go, and not realizing you guys are discriminating the process and not letting that person to travel.
Right.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll have more for you on discrimination. Welcome back. We finished off our last segment with a discussion on discrimination. A lot of the time, there's active discrimination. People willfully treat others with discriminatory behavior. But most of the time, it is ignorance, right?
Yes.
Lanieta, tell us a bit about that.
Well, thank you. Just around discrimination, also would like to share as and thankful that I also serve on the Fiji Human Rights Anti-Discrimination Commission as one of the commissioners for a 3-year term. So lots of this, and then my role in the commission also to see that people with disability have been discriminated so much, and my being in the commission would assist and see what are the, bring to light the discrimination that we face, whether in our homes, the services that are provided out there, are they really accessible to all people, including persons with disability? Education, employment, the health services, even the airports and what we had talked about earlier. And one of the main killers that we always talk about as persons with disability is that the attitude and behaviors of whether it's our family or our the various institutions, the service providers, that hinders our full and effective participation in society, regardless. As I've been saying, I'm proud to say I am blind. I have a visual impairment, but that doesn't really deter me from, enjoying life as I can, having a family, having an employment, and creating you know, that space for other people with disability or even blind or visually impaired persons, showing that good role model so that they are not looked at as being on the charity model, but also looking at the rights-based approach, having, you know, you are able to access the services like anyone else.
As an organization, what response do you get from some of your members, right, your regular members who are visually impaired, about how they're treated out in the communities?
Well, there is still challenges that are faced by our members. One of the things I was just sharing earlier is that the notes that our Fiji currency, over the years, from the organization's beginnings, members have been cheated by bus drivers or taxi drivers. The change that they give is not incorrect. It's not correct. So that then pushed the United Blind Persons to advocate through the Reserve Bank that these are the experiences of blind and visually impaired persons, and these our recommendation is to change the notes into different sizes. And then over the years we have meetings. It's over 10 years of advocacy, continuous advocacy with the Reserve Bank and other stakeholders, and that's how we have the notes launched in 2007 that has 2 inches difference from the $5 note to the $100 note, and there has been continuous conversation with the Reserve Bank whenever they make changes to their coins, etc. Yeah.
So that's one way that you've impacted services to be more inclusive in terms of being aware of, you know, how not to let people get away with things. But another thing that sometimes we do take for granted as people who are sighted is service and how it's given out to you. One thing that of course we encounter most of the time is someone who takes for granted where things are placed, and this is very important for those who are visually impaired. Earlier this week we met with you, Anna, and your team that came over, and there was something interesting that you highlighted about how things are presented and how it's important for someone to explain where things are placed. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So what we emphasized when we came here on Tuesday was the importance of direction when you are talking to a blind person. You not only go to them and say, the water, here's your water, or when you're trying to explain, the washroom is that side, you know, and then the person with visual impairment will be wondering, okay, that side. Which side? Is it the left or the right, or is it in front or at the back? So the sense of direction is very important for us. And also, what we talked about today is that for us, if you leave something, example, if you're at home, so like, you know, in the kitchen where you place sugar, salt, and all those other things. So for us, if it's placed in one place, then we will know, okay, the sugar is always in this place. And then when someone comes and put it in another place, that would be a challenge for us. Because normally we put things according to, you know, how we'll be comfortable in getting them. So changing things around is not actually good for a person with vision impairment. But if you change things around, for family members, it's important to inform the person with a vision impairment so they are aware.
Right, so a visually impaired person, like let's say for example a glass that's been left on the edge of a table getting knocked over, right, that's an accident. That can happen.
Yes, that can happen.
But often it's perceived as the blind person's inability to perform a task, right? I mean, do you agree with that perception that other people have? I mean, blindness does not necessarily equate to a mental disability, right?
No.
I mean, how important do you think it is for people to understand that here?
Well, in terms of independent living, for myself, I acquired my blindness when I was 10 years old. But I went through the Fiji School for the Blind and then mainstream into primary and secondary school, and then went to university and then have an employment. I have now family, I have 2 daughters. I teach them because I knew I could do. I even cook and bake and all those things, so I teach my daughters again. So regardless, I have a vision impairment, but I still perform tasks normally as any other woman could do, any mother can do, and the ability to do that. So the main thing is for us to be informed and orientated if things are around. And I was just sharing earlier, if just continuing from Anna on if you are supporting, providing support to a blind person in a dinner or serving my food, it would be a clockwise, distribution of food. You have ndalo on your 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock is your maybe chop suey, and then curry on your 3, and then salad on your 9. And then it's easier for you to explain to me, and also easier for me to understand where are all the dishes on my plate, rather than just cluttering all the food on my plate. And then I get to just fiddle around what other food is on my plate. And also just to courtesy and ask that person, these are the dishes we have, the menu, what do you want? Rather than just getting all the menu into that plate, and I wouldn't finish it all, and it's wasted. So just those simple etiquette, just to ensure that the blind person is able to enjoy that meal.
Thank you for that. When we come back, we'll be joined by the youth president of the United Blind Persons of Fiji, Joe. Stay with us. Welcome back. We'll now welcome our next guest, Joe. He's the youth president of the United Blind Persons of Fiji. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So let's talk about white cane awareness, right? Both of you are persons who use assistive devices and technologies, and the white cane is one of those. Before we discuss white cane awareness in general, talk to us about how important that is to a visually impaired person, the white cane.
We say that white cane is our eyes, and it is provided to us, in which it assists us in everywhere we go, especially in navigating in new environments or surroundings, and we need this. We need white cane in order to assist us around the environment. Also help us to move around freely and independently without relying on somebody else. So white cane, we say that it is our eyes, and we treat it as part of our body.
So La, you've brought your white cane with us today. If you wouldn't mind, could you probably just show it to us how it works, because you mentioned off camera that there are different types of white canes.
Oh, thank you. So I have my white cane here. There are 2 types of canes, white canes, and what I'm using is a white cane that is used by blind or visually impaired persons that uses a cane on their daily travel, wherever they go. And on this cane, you would notice it has the reflector, the red reflector there. This is mainly when we go at night. Traffic vehicles would be able, it reflects back to the vehicles that a blind person is walking on the street or the road, just to prevent them from having an accident. And it also has a tip. There are two different types of tips. What I'm using is a roll tip or snowball tip, mainly used in the rough terrains, and knowing that Fiji has inaccessible places and the terrain is quite rough, so I really enjoy using this cane. And another type of cane is used by vision impaired persons who have a little bit of vision, but it's called a symbol cane, and they use it mainly for crossing, just to show the drivers that he or she has a vision impairment. But I guess there still a need for more awareness to vehicle users on the importance of the white cane and to respect the white cane, even for the general public.
So just as you've described the use of the white cane, it is an assistive device, and of course it does require a little bit of, shall we say, concern from the general public.
Yes.
We don't necessarily realize that you do need a little bit of space when you are trying to navigate your way around. How do you manage in spaces that are crowded?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. For us cane users, we need a little bit of space to navigate through, but I must assure you, I've heard people saying it's a magic stick, which is not.
But it's not.
It's not a magic stick. It's the technique that we use, that we've been taught how to use the white cane is very important. And we can't just give a white cane to a blind person without any training. And we have those who already undergo orientation and mobility training who can provide that training to those who acquire their blindness later in life. But it's very important to learn those techniques in order to use your cane effectively. Yeah? So in a crowded place, if you are guiding me and I'm using my cane, we would go on a single line. So you put your arm on at the back, and then I will follow through. And then have a single line walking through those crowded places, and you wouldn't use the technique that you use on an open space. It's a different technique that you use when you are in a crowded place. Isn't it, Josiah?
Yeah.
So you go to school at USP, and of course there's hundreds and almost thousands of children and people that you interact with from one lecture room to another. Do you find that the buildings and the facilities at USP are adequately equipped for someone who is visually impaired?
Currently, it is not that really 100% accessible for persons with visual impairment. And we are lucky that we have a disability resource center there, in which it equips for those with disability, most particularly for us visually impairment. They also have a buddy system in which buddies are allocated for us, in which also they help us to find our lecture rooms and our tutorial rooms, and grateful that it is a big help for us, especially with thousands of students attending the university, and say that it is not really that accessible for students with visual impairment.
But you do happen to have an assistive technology device, the Job Access with Speech, which helps you in your studies. Tell us about that. How does it work?
It is a software that is installed into the PCs, not only PCs, into laptops, which helps us in our daily routine in school. And this software, I guess, software that is installed to PCs that enables persons with visual impairment that enables them to, I guess, be educated, and is a major source of information, especially when you're in a class or when you're studying. This is a main software that enables us to learn just like other normal people could do.
Right, thank you, Joe. We'll carry on the conversation into our final segment when we come back from another break. Stay with us. Welcome back to our final segment. We're with the United Blind Persons of Fiji. And in our last segment, Joe, we were discussing access to information. You spoke about how USP has these various provisions in place for persons with disability. Let's say, for example, the Learning Disability Center, or the Disability Learning Center, the buddy system, jobs access with speech. But USP, I mean, outside of USP, do you often get to see those provisions for persons with disabilities? If, for example, you go into a public office or you go to a business house, do you see those things?
At the moment, no. It's only the, we have it at the complex, the office at the complex, but in other business sectors, I think, no, they don't have this access to information installed into their computers, especially JAWS.
So we were talking about this earlier on before we started off the segment about how you need more interactive devices and also technology to be included in everyday services. One that's quite prevalent around the country is the use of text-to-speech on smart devices. But then again, there's a barrier there. Only those who have access to smartphones will be able to use these.
Yeah, that's right. With the growing goodness of the technology, it has made it accessible for us who are visual impairment. For example, mobile phones. If you have an Android phone or a smartphone, there's already a speech or voiceover or talk-to-speach already in those phones, one of the features. So we activate that, and blind people can start to use those phones and have them accessible, so they are able to communicate with their family, their friends, or other members. They're able to send text messages. And also having Facebook accounts, Messenger, Twitter, and other social media platforms. So they are able to also follow through the organization Facebook page and go into various websites if they are doing their online payment with, example, Westpac, and they are already registered under the online banking. They would be able to access that through their phone and do transfer funds or payment of bill. So that's through the Android phones and smartphones. And then when you look at the affordability of those, for those blind and visually impaired persons that can afford to buy those mobile phones, they are able to then purchase it and have those phones accessible. But unfortunately, for those who cannot afford, then they would still go for the normal phones that they can afford. So there is maybe more partnership to be done by mobile providers and other services, technologies, and telecommunication to cater both the needs of persons with disability or visually impaired persons, but also looking into, what are the incentives they can give for those who cannot afford but who would like to receive, accessible information. And then when we look at, for those of us who want to access websites, if we want to read Fiji Times or even come to the FBC website and read information, advertisements, or stories that are put on the website, and if I go into it, I use JAWS software also, like Josiah. If I go into that website and it's not accessible, my JAWS cannot read the information, whatever is placed. If there's a lot of graphics, surely the JAWS wouldn't be able to read it. And if you are putting up posts on Facebook and it's a lot of photos and no text description, it's totally inaccessible for us to follow through. And if we want to read the Fiji Times or the news on the Fiji Sun, if it's not accessible, then we are unable to access those information.
One aspect of independence, of course, is financial independence. You are working and you do have your own money that goes into the bank.
Right.
But having access to those funds does become a barrier, especially when you need to use it at the ATMs. We were talking about how there needs to be more interactive devices or technology within the ATMs. Before, you mentioned that there was a Westpac ATM that you used that had provision for an earphone where it would read out the prompts that are displayed on the screen. Do you come across this in any other ATMs? Is it around the country, or do you think that it needs to be introduced again?
It is a need that maybe we could work with various banks in Fiji, Westpac, ANZ, BSB, HFC, and other banks that I haven't mentioned. In terms of, ATMs, I remember a couple of years back I accessed I bank with Westpac, and which has the voiceover on the machine, but it has been taken away. But I would stress back that they relook at that and have those audio voiceover in those ATMs to enable those of us who are blind or visually impaired to access the ATM. But like for now, most of us, we have a technique that we use in ATMs that we just know all the different steps, and then we just use those to access funds out. But I think in terms of also the banks, apart from ATMs, is the forms that they do fill out if we are going in, opening a new account. And the forms that are already available in their websites, if they make it more accessible, put it in Word versions rather than PDF versions, so that we can download it, it's accessible, we can fill it out and send it back. Because we are promoting, the trees, not to cut down a lot of trees. We see that technology is playing that role, the digitization of information. It would be really helpful for us if it is accessible and have Word versions and not in PDF or other graphics that are put on those forms. And even the products that are coming up, if those information are accessible.
Very final question. If someone wants to get in touch or associate with the United Blind Persons of Fiji, how can they do that?
Thank you. The United Blind Persons of Fiji, we have an office at 3 Brown Street within the National Council of Disabled Persons Complex at 3 Brown Street along Turek. And the phone number is 3311 3300 616. And the email address is ubp@connect.com.fj. And you can also follow us on Facebook, which is United Blind Persons of Fiji.
Laniata, Joe, and our earlier guest, Anaseni, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to stay in touch with the United Blind Persons of Fiji.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great evening.